Stacy here with Pitch Deck Fire. We have another one of our pitch hacks of the week this week. I'm so excited you guys have joined us again this week. We have a great pitch hack for you today. For those of you who are new, we cover tips and tricks on pitching, pitch decks, sales decks, investor decks, and live presentations. So if you are a startup founder looking for funding or an established company looking for new customers, maybe you're even in an accelerator or an incubator program, all of you can find value in what we talk about in pitch hacks. Let's hop right into it. What's this week's pitch hack of the week? All right, this week we have animation or no animation. It sounds like to be or not to be, animation or not animation, right? If you're putting together a pitch for presentation and you're going to be presenting in front of an audience, you very often will see animation or use of animation or transitions in presentations. It's a very common feature of presentation softwares like PowerPoint. And if you're putting together your pitch, you need to think about a couple things when you're considering whether or not to put animation and what kind of animation to include in your pitch deck. So number one, let's think about the use of our pitch deck. Very often there's two common uses that you use your pitch deck for. Either one, you're going to be standing in front of an audience, whether it's a single investor or a crowd of people, and you're going to be presenting your pitch deck, right? It's a visual aid behind you. In those cases, animation can be really valuable. I'll talk a little bit more about why in a minute. It's possible you're using your deck as a send ahead to investors. In that case, you're usually saving your deck as a visual document in a format like a PDF, which usually flattens any kind of slide animation that you would do. So in those cases, you don't really want to use any animation. It's not going to be saved into the PDF format. In the case that you're presenting in front of an audience and you have your deck as a visual aid, you will want to use some level of animation. Now here at Pitch Deck Fire, our belief is you want to use very minimal animation, because when you present, you want your audience to be able to listen to you and pay attention to you and not be distracted by your slides. It's very, very easy for you to put too many animations or too much movement on the slides behind you and distract your audience. And you really don't want to do that. It should be a conversation in which they're paying attention to you speaking and not too much to the things happening on your slide. So when you put together animation for an in-person presentation, really think about keeping it as minimal as possible. Really simple animations. You don't want to use crazy animations. I'm sure you guys have all seen the very quirky PowerPoint animations that are available to you. There's ones where, the thing bounces in like this. There's other ones where it swivels or the blinds. There's a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and I don't want you to use any of those. Very, very infrequently do we ever use those kinds of animation, unless there's a very, very specific reason for it. And even then, I would just steer clear of it. The most common animation that you're going to be using is the fade in or fade out, or the appear, where it just blinks and appears. Those are the two that I want you to use the most often, and I really want you to use them sparingly. When you do use them, a lot of times what I say is use it to build a slide, or I call it a building slide, where you bring in one piece of a slide at a time. So imagine I had a PowerPoint behind me here and it had 3 things on it, okay? If I had these 3 things all up on the screen at once when I'm presenting, it can be very distracting to my audience. There's too much for them to read or pay attention to as I'm speaking. So instead, I want to build that slide up as I'm speaking about it, right? One piece at a time. I bring up one piece, I talk about it, I bring up the next piece of the slide, and then I talk about it. That can be a really great way to use animation. Another really good example of using animation that's a little bit more complicated than that is if you have a more complicated message to share. So it's possible that what you've built is very visual or hard to explain in clear terminology or with visuals rather than animation or moving visuals, right? I'll give you an example. There's a company that's creating new ways to move things into space, and space can be a very difficult thing to kind of visualize or explain, and specifically orbits and movement of orbits and things like that. And so what they have done in their pitch deck is visualize the movement of things when they're trying to explain how their product works. So it's possible you have something more difficult to show without some sort of moving visuals. That can be another place where animation can be valuable. I would say that that's the rare case though. Instead, I would focus on using animation very minimally just to build slides and keep it so there's less information on the slide behind you. Be very, very cautious of using weird animation and don't use too much of it. You really don't want to distract your audience. So I hope that answers your question of animation or no animation on your pitch deck. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's pitch hack. I hope you found it valuable. If you have any other thoughts on animation or when and why you should use animation, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you have an idea for an upcoming pitch hack, definitely let us know. We'd love to talk about your upcoming pitch hack in another video. We put out new pitch hacks every single week. Again, I'm Stacy with Pitch Deck Fire. So glad you joined us today. I hope you join us again. Happy pitching!